Get back in control with Off the Wagon, adventures in emotional eating, health, and weight loss. Each episode containing fork-sized mindset tweaks, perspective shifts, and lifestyle hacks to get you back on the wagon. Whether it's habit change, emotional eating, addictions, weight loss, willpower, or relationships, there's something here for you. So let's get on the wagon and get down the road to your goals with me, Christy R. Hall. Welcome to episode 50, where today we're talking about setting healthy boundaries. I chose this topic because as I was working on the Food Pushers episode, I realized how many of us struggle with our boundaries. Not only just the encroachment on our space by others, but how we may force our own thoughts and beliefs on others and violate their boundaries. It's a very delicate situation, especially when it comes to food and emotional eating. Most of the time, people are concerned about us or we're concerned about them. But even when it's not about the food, some of us struggle to put ourselves and our beliefs and values first. People pleasers are also at particular risk of having their boundaries violated. So if you have difficulty putting your own needs above those of others, then you likely have issues with setting personal boundaries, especially in the world today where so many people take little responsibility for themselves and feel an excessive amount of entitlement. You likely can't go a single day without running into someone who's all too happy to let you or someone else pick up their slack or avoid taking responsibility for themselves and their actions. And what this means to those of us who lack firm boundaries is that we are the ones who take the responsibility for others and pick up the slack. If we have weak personal limits, other people know this and have a tendency to take advantage of our desire to feel needed or our overdeveloped sense of responsibility. They continue to expect us to put them and their desires and their needs first, all to our own detriment. So it's up to each of us to determine what we are comfortable doing in any and all of our relationships so that we stop feeling manipulated, quit holding ourselves back, and so that we can get on with enjoying our lives. So how do you know if you could use a shoring up of your personal boundaries? I'm going to provide you with a couple of questions. Don't worry about trying to write them down or answer them now. I'm going to include a download PDF where you can get all of these questions and then you can take time to answer them yourself, when you have a chance. But I do want to cover them here because you may be able to determine right out the gate that you have problems with your boundaries and you need to work on that. So here again are just a couple of questions that you can ask yourself. Do you believe that your happiness depends on others? Are you unable to say no even when you want to? Do you feel responsible for other people's feelings? Are you more concerned with what others think of you than what you think of yourself? Do you constantly feel drained by all you have to do? Do you neglect your own needs, even basic self-care such as eating and sleeping? Would others say that you are a people pleaser? Do you often feel resentful or taken advantage of, even though you might not admit it? Do you find time to take care of others but never really seem to find the time to take care of yourself? Do you find it hard to make decisions or let others make them for you? Do you consistently ask others for their opinions before you take action? Do you tend to take on the emotions or the moods of the people around you or in your environment? Do you find it nearly impossible to ask for help even when you're struggling? Do you feel that others' opinions are more valid than your own? Are you frequently unaware of how you feel or what you want? Do you often feel anxious or afraid, even though you aren't sure of what you might be afraid or anxious about? Are you overly sensitive to criticism and try to please everyone all the time? Do you always go along with what other people want instead of voicing your desires? Maybe because it's simpler like that, or because you're afraid of making someone angry or upset. If you recognize yourself in many of these questions, don't worry. We're going to cover how to set some personal, healthy boundaries, and I'm going to provide you with ways that you can get started. Not only creating your personal boundaries, but how to implement those and get those out into the real world so that you can start living a life that feels freer and less burdened and less worrisome. So you may already realize whether you do or don't have personal boundary issues, but I want to establish what is a healthy personal boundary. Because if no one ever taught you how people should treat you, or if you were never encouraged to determine what you're willing to put up with, you may believe that setting boundaries may make you hard or uncaring or selfish. But that's really not the case. You deserve fair treatment and consideration just like everyone else. You shouldn't have to take up the roles and responsibilities of others. And you certainly shouldn't have to defend your positions on your beliefs to the death like you were fighting a war. It should be up to you how you treat and serve your body, the nutrition you put in it, as well as the things that you're willing to do for yourself and others. Setting healthy personal boundaries isn't about barricading yourself behind a wall so that you don't get hurt. It's about respecting yourself enough to admit what you want and demand it from others in your life. Setting strong personal boundaries is an absolute must on your journey to making yourself a priority in your own life. It's a foundational part of the process, and without personal boundaries, you'll be back to saying yes to everyone's needs and wants except your own before you know it. Building healthy boundaries is one of the best ways that you can put yourself and your health and your wellness first. Boundaries protect you from being taken advantage of and being a doormat. They define who you are in each of your relationships and help you be more fully aware of who you are and what you want and what you're willing to put up with. In a nutshell, boundaries teach others how to treat you, and they're built around things like your feelings, your thoughts, your beliefs, and values, the choices you make, your intuition, your needs, and your wants. Ideally, your boundaries should be firm and clear, but it's up to you to choose in what situations you allow them to be flexible. Establishing and maintaining these boundaries can help you discover what you really want for yourself and for your life, since for so many of us, those lines of what others want and what we want for ourselves get blurred. So if you're one of the people who's realizing that, hey, I don't have that great of, or any, boundaries, I might should get some of those, then your next steps are going to be how to start setting them. It's important to realize and remember that setting boundaries is not really a one-time thing, and it's not as simple as telling someone, don't push food on me anymore. Before you can practice them, you have to understand what they are. Then you can practice them in different situations and get comfortable with asserting yourself. No one is born with boundaries, so we each have to decide for ourselves what ours are and then stand firm in expecting them to be met and accepted by others. This process can be learned, so you really have no excuses. So first things first, take some time and try to understand yourself a little bit better. Think about how you want to be treated. Think about the things that others do that make you feel put upon. Think about the situations where other people's opinions on your life have made you make choices that you didn't want to or really didn't intend to. Identify areas where you find yourself picking up someone else's slack, taking on someone else's mantle, or just plain volunteering because you feel you should or because you have to. Think about things that you're asked to do and that drain your energy or that make you feel exhausted. Most people who bend over backwards to help others while ignoring their own needs haven't taken the time to discover who they truly are and what they truly want. Knowing and understanding yourself doesn't happen overnight, but you can start the process right now, today. And one good way to start this process is by keeping a journal or, even getting out a notepad to write these things down so that you can document things as they come up to you or as you think of them. No one besides you will see your notepad or your journal or what you keep in your phone. So you can be open and honest about your thoughts and your feelings. You can start by brainstorming on the areas I just mentioned and getting your thoughts down about them on paper or in your phone. Thinking about the situations and the people and all of the things that you have to do in your life, you're going to kind of get an idea of what you do like, what you don't like, what works for you, what's not working for you. And at that point, you can sit down and think about, okay, I don't really want to discuss weight and food choices and body image issues every time I go home for Christmas. I don't want to talk about boyfriend issues or husband issues every time I talk to my friends. I don't want to allow someone else's thoughts or judgments or comments or even just the expressions on their face change the path that I'm on, right? Especially for emotional eaters who are used and dieters who are used to judgment from others, right? We've learned to be able to see. We know what that look means. We know what that sigh means. We know what all of those things mean, and we understand the judgment that's coming along with that. And for a lot of us, we allow that judgment or that perceived judgment to keep us from sticking to a path, or we allow it to make changes to the path that we're on. So, if you're, say, following a vegetarian way of life and you're used to eating this way, and yet, there's your mom or your grandmother, or, who's giving you that look that means, you're not eating my meatloaf or you're not eating my cookies or whatever the thing is. And you find yourself veering off track, right? Going ahead and eating the meat when you intended to follow a vegetarian diet. Or eating the cookie when you were trying to stay away from sugar, just in order to please someone or make someone feel better. But by evaluating, the situations that you're in, right? Holidays, people, and even conversations that you may be having, and establishing what you do and don't like, it gets easier to determine what your boundaries should and shouldn't be. And as you establish and work with your boundaries, you can reflect on how they're working for you and what snags you may hit and how you may think it best to address those issues. As an example, you may decide, I don't really want to talk about weight and body image issues, with my family anymore. It's too difficult. We don't see eye to eye on how things should be. And so I don't really want to do that anymore. You may go home and say, okay, guys, I really don't want to discuss these things with you anymore. I'm not really having fun and it makes me feel bad. And you may find that when you've had weak boundaries or no boundaries for a while, that sometimes there are some growing pains and the people around us get irritated, they get upset, they get angry, they forget about our boundaries and they push anyway. And depending on the situation, right, whether or not we're talking about a food pusher or we're talking about somebody who has a tendency to slack off and allow you to pick up that slack, there may be some struggles, some growing pains, as you say, no, I'm not going to have that discussion, or no, I'm sorry, you'll have to do it yourself. And so a journal or writing things down, putting it in your phone, whatever you decide to do, will help you put those moments into perspective so that you can evaluate what's happening, see if there's a possible solution that can keep you from just backing down and going back to the way you were. Journaling is also a great way to give yourself space to think about how to establish your boundaries before you actually have to use them. Examples here might be thinking about how you'll handle those food pushers at Christmas, or how you will deal with comments about your body or your weight, or what you do or don't put on your plate. And this mental exercise will give you more confidence so that you'll feel secure in your ability to stand your ground at the moment these types of challenges occur. You can also use your journal as a place to clarify what you value in life. What do you want more of in your life? What are your deepest desires? What are your goals? What are your aspirations? How would you like to spend your free time? How would you like to practice more self-care? What do you want to achieve in your life? What things in your life would you like to change? Once you know what you desire and value in life, it's going to be easy or easier to use those to make decisions about how to spend your time, how to create those boundaries, how to spend your energy. And anything that doesn't align with those desires, those goals, those values, it gets easy to kind of give them an automatic no thanks or a pass. Consider the folks that you hang out with. Obviously, you want to enjoy the time you spend with the people you spend it with, so be a little choosy about where and how much time you spend with others. You are not responsible for fixing their problems or their life. You don't have to rush in and save the day. And if certain people require a lot of effort or demand a lot of time, perhaps it's time to start seeing them a little bit less. I'm not talking about cutting someone out of your life, although you may choose to do that. Rather, if something or someone is exhausting, like spending the whole day with your family, maybe you can consider dividing up the time so that you have smaller doses, or consider some sort of activity or distraction that everyone can focus on to take some of the pressure off. When you first start out making these changes and establishing these boundaries, you're likely going to find yourself slipping back into habits and providing default answers. Sure, I can take care of that, or sure, I'd like a donut. The easiest way to help change this is by taking a pause or a breather, just delaying a little bit. You can say, let me think about it, or let me check my schedule or my calendar, or even just maybe here in a minute. At the same time, asking for that minute or two, it allows you to touch in with yourself, your body. Does the idea of the new project or the donut or going out to eat, does it excite you? Does it weigh you down? Does it feel like throwing in the towel? Does it make you physically sick to your stomach? Do you feel emotions you wouldn't or didn't expect? Get to know where and how your emotions show up in your body. Begin using the way your body responds as a gauge as to whether or not a situation is good for you. With some practice and some paying attention, you won't really even need to think about it. It will become second nature. But the idea behind the pause or the breath is really just to provide you with some time and space to think about and regroup if necessary. Because making yourself a priority and putting boundaries in place is a process. You must acknowledge and accept that you're not always going to deal with situations in the best way. You may go into the automatic yes mode and regret having agreed to it later. You may allow someone to make a joke at your expense or to push food on you just because you've gotten used to it. There are going to be slip-ups, but that doesn't mean you aren't making progress. Learn from each experience and keep going. Be kind to yourself and accept that all journeys have their ups and downs. Just because you have set personal boundaries doesn't mean you have to say a firm no to everything. Each situation is a little bit different, and you may find as time goes on that you want to alter your boundaries, and that's perfectly normal. Just use your tools of pausing and checking in with your body and using those feelings in it and sensations in it as a gauge to determine when you feel genuine excitement about whatever opportunity is being presented to you. Your new motto could be, if it feels right, do it. So after you've established how you want to feel, you have to figure out a way to share that information with the rest of your circle in a way that doesn't invite confrontation, but still says, here's what I will do, here's what I won't. There are ways to do this that are kind and gentle. So I want to provide you with some ways to establish your boundaries and even stand up for yourself without feeling like a monster. Understand that saying no or stating your boundaries is not an invitation to commentary. Don't give in to the feelings that you need to explain or defend your decision. The other person doesn't have the right to judge or comment on your decision. If someone starts to beg or argue with you after you set a boundary, simply restate your boundary and end the conversation. Be firm, but be courteous. Don't get angry about it. Use unassuming and direct language when you stand your ground. Don't give excuses or explain why you've come to this decision. You only need to state your answer or your choice. If you have judgmental people in your life, and we all do, you can start drawing attention to your needs by telling them that it's not okay for them to criticize you. Tell them that you would like them to stop commenting on your body, your weight, or your food choices, or whatever aspect of your life that they're judging. Remember that pausing before agreeing to something is your new best friend. Let the person who's asking you know that you'll need to sleep on it or check your schedule, but you'll get back to them. And that way you have time to decide whether or not you really want to say yes. And if not, how you'll tell them. Thanks, but no thanks. And this applies to food too. If someone says, okay, it's time, come have a piece of pie, sometimes they take offense when you say, no, I'm not really hungry right now. Or, I don't really want that right now. You can excuse yourself by, saying, oh, you know what? I need to run to the bathroom really quick. And then just spend a few minutes there in the peace and quiet all by yourself, determining, okay, is this the hill I want to die on? Is this the donut I want to fight over? And you may come up with, creative ways that you can get out of the situation without upsetting anybody. If someone is offended or angered by your new boundaries, just keep in mind that that's their problem and not yours. Most likely, these people are the ones who have been aware that you're a pushover, and they've gotten used to being able to control you. When you start to stand your ground, they're not going to like it. But don't back down. If they're interested in being around you, they will adapt. And if not, they'll move on. And pretty soon, they'll be somebody else's problem. And either way, you'll be freer. So as we close out this week's podcast, I do want to take a moment and reflect on the fact that, talking about this for a few minutes, it makes it seem very simple, very compact, very clean. And as living in your day-to-day life is not compact. It is not clean. And just a few moments of talking about an issue rarely resolves it. It took you years to develop and modify the boundaries that you do have, or the lack of boundaries that you have. It will take time to create good, solid, healthy, proper boundaries for yourself. So don't expect that you'll get it right the first day out, or that they will get it right 3 months, 6 months, a year from now. Sometimes we can be really rigid in how we think about others and how we expect them to be, and that can sometimes work against us, especially when someone in our circle is trying to make change. And so they may expect you to just give in, and so they may push harder, and you may have to stand your ground, and be even more firm. And always know and find comfort in this idea that you're allowed to have boundaries. You're allowed to have an original thought. You're allowed to disagree. You're allowed to do it the way you want to do it. Even if it looks wrong to everybody else, you're allowed. As an adult, it's your right. As a human, it's your right. And so if they get upset, and I understand how hard it is when other people get upset with you, if they get upset, just understand it's going to be okay. If you need to, and I've done this before, you tell them, you know what, I'm still going to do this. And when it screws up or turns out exactly like you said, you can say, I told you so. Normally, people are satisfied with that, right? Because they all want to be right. And if it turns out that you are right, they're very unlikely to say anything about it at all. I hope that this has been helpful for you today. I really hope that you will sit down and think about your boundaries, because I have to admit, in working on this podcast, I've realized that I even have some boundary issues that need working on. I think that establishing good and healthy boundaries is a very positive step for all of us, especially emotional eaters. And so I think that this is a really important thing to work on. It is a noble cause. And so I hope that this has been helpful. And if you have any questions, or if you want to talk to me about your boundaries, or chat about how you can make or establish boundaries with the people that you're living with and working with and sharing your life with, I would love to talk to you. You can find me on Facebook at fb.me/Coach Christy R. Hall, or at my website, www.christyrhall.com. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.